Hi, and welcome to this bite-sized video on making a difference for GCSE maths. And in this video, we're going to take a look at what are the key performance differentiators that we've seen for our very highest attaining students that go on to achieve a grade 9. So let's take a quick look at some general themes across a whole paper or series. So we've got one paper on screen here. I think this is 2H from last year. But we see a general theme across all three papers in each series. And grade 9 students are typically getting full marks on the vast majority of questions, apart from maybe the last 5 or so most challenging questions and where they might drop the odd mark. What it's clear to see is that on those most challenging questions, grade 9 students perform significantly better than students who go on to achieve a grade 8. So there's a really key performance difference there. Those students are really differentiating themselves on those most challenging questions, and that's your main indicator of grade 9. And the enhanced skills map where we're taking this analysis from is really helpful for helping you to identify as a teacher those questions that are the main indicators of whether a student's working at that kind of grade 9 or whether in fact they're more secure at the grade 8. So you can see on this paper here, for example, question 17, question 19b were key questions that differentiated our grade 9 students. So as I just mentioned, at this grade 9 boundary is where we see some of the largest performance differences on individual questions, and that's more so than at any other grade boundary. So the questions with the biggest performance differences between grade 8 and grade 9, they had differences of around 45% compared to on the other grade boundaries, the biggest differences we generally saw was around 30% or lower. So those grade 9 students really are clearly differentiating themselves. Obviously, these are the most challenging questions where even the kind of the average performance for those grade 9 highest performance students can be relatively low. So in the kind of 40% to 75% average kind of region. So algebra obviously dominates, but geometry is also a really key point. And there are some individual probability and ratio questions that come high up on the list, but these are the ones that have got significant algebraic manipulation involved in them to solve. So it does really hinge on those algebraic skills. So obviously mathematical arguments and proof is a key area where grade 9 will differentiate themselves. And you can see a few of those other individual topics there. These are just general themes that we saw looking at those questions with the biggest performance differences. In geometry, it's those more complex vector questions, so maybe where they have to prove that two vectors are parallel or that some points are collinear, anything that's a geometrical proof, and quite often problems involving similar shapes, similar objects are ones where a lot of students really struggle, and those grade 9 students can be a lot more successful. So let's look at some examples now of questions where we see those really big performance differences. It's got a couple of examples on screen here, and you can see at the bottom that huge difference between the average number of marks the grade 9 students are achieving compared to those students that go on to achieve a grade 8. So question 13 is all about proof here, and we've got the nth term for a sequence of triangular numbers. And then we've got to prove that the sum of any two consecutive triangular numbers is a square number. So if you pause the video and have a go at it, it's really not that challenging. It's only a 3-mark question. It flows through quite nicely. So the key here is all in the setup. Do students have that skill set of just that mathematical toolkit to deal with proofs? So knowing how to, for example, express a consecutive terms given the nth term. So understanding that they would, have n plus 1 times n plus 2 all over 2 as the consecutive, the next term along. And that goes along with some of those other skill sets that just need developing in proof. So things like understanding how to express an odd number and an even number. How do we prove algebraically that something, a given expression, is a multiple of a given number? How do we prove that it is a square number? So understanding that they're going to have to kind of refactorize it at the end to show that it's actually a perfect square. All of those kind of proof skills, that's really what you want to be developing with those students who would be targeting that grade 9. Question 22 on the right hand side. So nominally it's a probability question. However, the challenge here isn't about the understanding of the probability concept. It is actually in terms of actually the challenge of setting up and solving some algebraic equations in two variables here in quite a non-standard way, actually. And also, as part of this question, students have got to deal with a change. So they're given a probability initially, and then they're told 2 more red counters and 3 more green counters put into the bag. And they're given now an updated probability. And so they've got to be able to process that information about the change in an algebraic way, create some equations, and then solve. It's really quite challenging, and I'd encourage you to pause the video here and just have a go at that to get a feel for the challenge that's involved. And this theme of being able to understand and process information about a change in a scenario is something that crops up again. And we see that another example of this in question 15, where we're given a ratio of Marta's pay to Khalid's pay. And then we're told that they both get an increase of £1.50 in their hourly pay rate. And after that, the ratio changes. And we've got to use that information now to work out the hourly pay before the increase. So there's changing ratios. How do we deal with this? How do we process the information algebraically in order to then start to solve? And we can see here that, grade 8 students really struggled with that. Grade 9 students a lot more successful here, again, on average 67% of the mark. So still a challenging question for our grade 9, our highest attaining students. On the right hand side, we've got, I suppose more famous questions each series, usually involving a complicated and beautiful geometrical diagram. And we tend to get one of these on each series, and they are always a lovely differentiator of our highest attaining students, and we can see the performance difference on that question there. So on screen here, we've got some of the higher tier themed topic papers that I'd recommend to support students that are targeting grade 9. In addition to these, what I'd really recommend to you as a teacher is to actually use the enhanced skills map, because quite often the most challenging questions, they appear across a range of topics, and that enhanced skills map is going to allow you as a teacher to really be able to identify and hone in on those most challenging questions where we see those big differences between grade 8 and grade 9, and to be able to then identify and obviously then kind of feed them to your students that are working at targeting that grade range. And of course, we've got our sets of aiming for grade 9 practice papers. There are 4 sets in total for grade 9. 3 of those sets are a full 1.5 hours, and then one of the sets, set 4, is some shorter 40-minute tests with student-friendly mark schemes. So they're really perfect to do and mark in a single lesson. And of course, for our highest attaining students, we have got the extended math certificate. So this is qualification that's been specifically developed to really stretch, challenge your most able students to really delve deeper and develop that really secure mastery, understanding of all of the key concepts and mathematical techniques that they need to be able to really fly with the GCSE content and to have that great transition into a further study at A level. So whether your students sit this as a qualification or whether you just use this amazing bank of resources, everything that's on the Emporium, the textbook, to support your students in boosting their grade even further in GCSE, then that's entirely up to you. But there's a wealth of resources here. We've got some wonderful sample assessments and a new set of specimen papers just released as well, and some fantastic topic tests that we can see on the next slide. On screen here, you can just see a sample of some of the topics that are covered in our EMC topic practice papers. Each of these has got a couple of walkthrough videos, a little QR code at the top of the paper. So these are great for setting for a little bit of independent work, a bit of additional extension for your students targeting grade 9 to maybe be working on independently or doing at home. And it's got lots of practice at that most challenging level, so where you're looking for banks of questions that are really reflective of that highest standard, then this is a great go-to for you, and you can find all of those on the Maths Emporium. This video is part of your Subject Advisor support from Pearson. I'm Vicky, the Subject Advisor for Maths and Statistics, and you can get in touch with me in all the ways that you can see on screen there.